Jalen Duren is the most physically impressive big man.
He's a super athlete. The body is incredible. He's a real rim protector, not like Chet Holmgren or Walker Kessler or Mark Williams.
If you really want to get who Jalen Duren is, don't start with stats or numbers. Start with the feeling he gives off. On TV, it looks simple enough. A screen, a roll, a rebound, a dunk. Clean, basic basketball. But if you're the team facing it, it doesn't feel simple. It feels like a nonstop toll. Every drive into the paint costs you something. Your spacing, your legs, your breath, your confidence.
We are a great team that's on the rise. Obviously a young team, got a lot to prove. And kind of just show the league that, yeah, I'm here.
Cade Cunningham brings the ball up calm and steady. The defense points and shifts like they've got a plan, and for a split second, the floor looks calm until Duren sets that screen like a polite car wreck, spins out like he already knows the next 5 seconds, and starts moving downhill with force that makes defenders second-guess helping. Because if you help, you leave a shooter open. And if you don't, you're about to meet him at the rim with bad timing and worse luck.
Got a lot to prove, and still a long way to go. Me, myself, I wanted to kind of take my next step, take another leap in my career, another leap in my development, and kind of just show the league that, yeah, I'm here.
And here's the part that breaks teams. Doing everything right still isn't enough. You can defend the pick and roll perfectly, blow up the pass, contest the shot, keep your chest square, arms up. Everything textbook. But as soon as the ball bounces off the rim, Duren's already inside your space like he owns it.
Jalen Duren's swing skill is his motor. When he goes to dunk the ball, he rips the rim off. He can run the floor. He's exceptionally long. He does just about everything from a physical standpoint.
He doesn't jump like a regular big. He rises like a decision you can't take back. He bodies you under the glass, snatches the board, and turns your proudest defensive stand into 2 points that feel straight up unfair. Not because of refs or calls, but because of how inevitable it feels. That's who he's turning into in Detroit. Not just a bouncy young center chasing highlights, but a dude who turns the paint into a trap.
People probably see me and probably think, oh, he's just some big, strong guy, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to keep my body where I want it to be in terms of weight, strength, athleticism, flexibility, and all those things. I think I'm in great shape, probably the best shape of my career.
Every mistake turns into a dunk. Every missed shot becomes his chance to make you pay. Every game feels like a physical debt you didn't agree to owe. And that's what makes it dangerous for the league. This isn't some aging vet bullying rookies for a few more rebounds. This is a 22-year-old still building his identity, figuring out how to make his presence loud without ever saying a word.
He's been one of the top prospects since he was a freshman in high school, but the motor hasn't always lived up to it. So sometimes the production, or at least the consistency of it, doesn't impress as much as his potential does. If he ever gets to the point where he's an everyday guy, his game's going to go to the next level.
Detroit's been a punchline for too long, but what Duren's doing is a reminder of what real foundation basketball looks like. You can't ignore it when it keeps showing up. Possession after possession, screens that cause panic, rolls that tear open defenses, rebounds that break morale, and finishes that land like exclamation marks on your mistakes. If the Pistons are climbing out of the shadows, if they're finally turning into a team people have to take seriously again, Jalen Duren isn't just a supporting piece, he's the part of the story that makes it painful to play against them. The funny thing about young centers in today's NBA is how fast the league tries to define them, like it's sorting through paperwork instead of letting a player grow. If you're not stretching the floor with threes, breaking down defenders with step backs, or running plays like a guard trapped in a 6'10" frame, people rush to call you limited. That's exactly what they tried to do with Jalen Duren. Label him as a rim runner, a dunker, an energy guy. The kind of player who cleans up around the basket but never gets the spotlight. A background character in someone else's movie. And honestly, for a while, it looked like they might have been right. He's you under the glass, snatches the board, and turns your proudest defensive stand into 2 points that feel straight up unfair. Not because of refs or calls, but because of how inevitable it feels. That's who he's turning into in Detroit. Not just a bouncy young center chasing highlights, but a dude who turns the paint into a trap.
He's been one of the top prospects since he was a freshman in high school, but the motor hasn't always lived up to it. So sometimes the production, or at least the consistency of it, doesn't impress as much as his potential does. If he ever gets to the point where he's an everyday guy, his game's going to go to the next level.
Detroit was a mess. Constant lineup changes, losses stacking up, everything loud but going nowhere. Even when Duren did his job, it faded into the chaos like it didn't matter. But this season flipped that whole story. That energy guy label isn't an evaluation anymore. It's a mistake. Because Duren didn't just level up, he started producing at a rate that forces you to stop and notice.
We got a great, player development staff, a great, coaching staff that really was hands-on with me. I got some one-on-one work with JB early in the summer that was really great. And I've never really had a coach in the NBA, at least, that really kind of took the time to have really one-on-one sessions with me. So I feel like that was great, not only for my skill, but for our connection and our bond as a coach and player. Be in terms of weight, strength, athleticism, flexibility, and all those things. I think I'm in great shape, probably the best shape of my career.
Around 17.8 points, 10.8 rebounds, shooting nearly 63% from the field. That's not effort, that's evolution. You can't fake that kind of efficiency. Those numbers belong to someone who knows exactly what he's doing, not just someone jumping for lobs. What really changes the conversation is how steady it all feels. His dominance doesn't come in random bursts. It repeats game after game, like a rhythm nobody can break. One night, it's quiet work. Strong screens, smart positioning, easy buckets. You check the box score later and realize he's sitting on another double-double like it's nothing. The next night, he takes over out loud. The kind of performance that hijacks the broadcast because everyone's talking about him. Just look at that win over New Orleans. 20 points, 15 rebounds, Detroit in control from start to finish, and Duren setting the tone with pure physicality. And it's not just a one-off, it keeps happening. Even Detroit's team reports can't help pointing it out anymore. The conversation shifted from he's playing well to this is just who he is now. But what makes it hit even harder is that he's doing all this while still figuring himself out. Still learning what his body can handle, still adjusting to the grind that wears most young bigs down. He's already pushed through an ankle issue this month. Detroit and national outlets said he'd be reevaluated after dealing with that strain. And for a player who lives in contact, that's a serious test. Yet he's still out there, still wrecking the paint, still owning the glass like nothing happened. That kind of resilience changes how teams see you. It's not just about what you can do, it's about how long you can keep doing it. And that's where the label breaks completely. When Duren's on the court, the paint feels different. It shrinks for opponents and stretches for Detroit. Every trip down the floor forces a decision. Sell out to stop Cade and let Duren sprint free to the rim, or tag him and leave shooters open. Either choice hurts. That's not an energy guy problem, that's a system problem. That's what you build around, because his game is simple, physical, and real, and it keeps showing up no matter how teams try to stop it. Jalen Duren's story doesn't start with hype or flashy headlines. It starts with a warning most people missed, because the league is wired to chase the loud stuff. Back in college, he wasn't out there pretending to be the kind of big who floats to the corner and avoids the paint. He was doing the real old-school work in a body made for the modern game, grabbing rebounds like a vacuum, protecting the rim like a gatekeeper, finishing through contact, and making grown men look uncomfortable for entire halves. Memphis only got 1 year of that, a short stay where he basically said without needing to brag, I'm ready for the next level, and I'm not waiting around. He put up 12 points, 8.1 boards, and 2.1 blocks a night, snagged AAC Freshman of the Year, and declared for the draft like someone who already knew exactly where he belonged. But draft night didn't hand him a smooth welcome. He didn't take the easy road, the one with clear headlines and neat team fits. His path went through that classic NBA shuffle. Young players treated more like trading chips than people. Taken 13th overall in 2022, his rights bounced around before landing with Detroit, a franchise that was rebuilding in every direction. That chaos almost felt poetic, because Duren wasn't coming in to fit some clean system. He was walking into the noise, and instead of pretending the paint was outdated, the Pistons saw him for what he was, a teenager built like a statement. They didn't draft a floor spacing experiment. They drafted proof that toughness still has value. A center who could sprint, bang, and rebound like the game still meant something. What's wild is how young he was while pulling this off. Most bigs need years just to figure out the pace, when to jump, how to hold position, how to battle without fouling out or getting played off the court. Duren skipped the waiting period. Even now, still only 22, he stopped looking like a developing project and started looking like a real problem. This season isn't just he's improving, it's him stepping into that rare zone where his presence starts to shape the entire team. The stats tell part of it: 17.8 points, 10.8 rebounds, 62.7% shooting. But the bigger truth is what those numbers mean. He's turning into the kind of center who makes the game simpler for his teammates and more miserable for everyone else. And because once a big reaches this level, everything changes. It stops being about potential. It becomes pressure. You can't game plan for him like he's a highlight clip. You have to prepare for him like weather. Inevitable, physical, constant. Detroit hasn't had that kind of presence in years. Now, when Duren's on the court, other teams start feeling that slow frustration that eats at you. We defended that, we rotated right. So why are we still giving up points? That's the thing. He's not chasing a brand, he's building an identity. The kind that doesn't fade when the lights dim. From Memphis to Detroit, it's been the same quiet message. He doesn't need flash to dominate. He just needs the floor, the ball, and the will to make every possession heavy. There's always that one moment in a young player's career when the background noise fades and you can actually feel the switch flip. When it's no longer, he's gonna be good, but oh, he's already doing it. For Jalen Duren, that moment didn't come from a flashy dunk reel or a viral clip. It came in a game that made pros look lost, the kind of night where the opponent's scouting report got ripped to shreds before halftime. You could see it on the coach's face, that tight, frustrated stare that says, "We prepped for this, so why is it still happening?" That was Duren in Mexico City against Dallas, dropping a career-high 33 and locking down the paint like it was a private event, and then nobody was getting in without his say-so. That performance didn't feel like luck or a hot streak. It felt like a takeover built on power, rhythm, and non-stop pressure. No gimmicks, no fancy isolation plays, just a young big deciding the rim belonged to him. What made it matter wasn't just the stat line, but what it said about how far he's come. When a center puts up that kind of night without needing his name called on every set, it means he's learning how to attack entire systems, not just the man in front of him. He's figuring out when to sprint into early position before the defense is ready, how to hold his ground that extra heartbeat so the help shows up late, how to finish through contact without flinching. People throw around the word rim runner like it's an insult, like it means you only score when someone else makes it happen. But there's a difference between a rim runner and a rim threat. A rim runner moves. A rim threat changes everything. Duren's becoming the latter, the guy who warps the floor by existing. The weak side help has to bite sooner. The corner shooters get cleaner looks. Cade Cunningham doesn't need the perfect driving lane anymore because the real advantage is already waiting behind the screen, ready to rise. That's where Duren's story and Detroit's story start blending into something dangerous. The Pistons don't need him to be a polished, face-up scorer to scare people. They just need him to keep being inevitable. They need him to keep turning good defense into nice try, because that's the kind of weight that breaks teams down over 4 quarters. You can talk yourself into surviving against finesse. You can't fake your way through a beating that never stops. By the 4th quarter, your legs start lying to you, and that's when Duren takes over. That's when every offensive rebound feels personal. Every putback feels like a statement. Every dunk after a missed rotation feels like Detroit saying, "You can't guard everything." And we know exactly what you'll give up, and the scary part? It's sustainable. Most breakout runs in today's league fade fast, built on hot shooting streaks, lucky whistles, or the right matchup. But Duren's game doesn't rely on any of that. His dominance comes from the kind of habits that travel, screens that free up teammates, rolls that collapse defenses, rebounds that spark second chances, and finishes that don't care who's in the way. He doesn't need to be perfect to ruin your night. He just needs to keep showing up, strong, sharp, and on time. And that's the mark of something bigger. When a 22-year-old big starts winning possessions the way veterans do, when he starts making every team adjust just because he's on the floor, that's when potential turns into presence. That's when the league stops talking about what he could be and starts realizing this is what it costs to play against him. What makes Jalen Duren's rise hit different isn't that Detroit finally found a young big who can dunk through traffic and clean the glass. Teams stumble into those every year. The real reason it matters is who he's paired with and how that partnership bends the game's shape in real time. Cade Cunningham doesn't play fast, he plays deliberate. He's that kind of storm that builds slow, steady, unbothered, and completely in control. He pulls defenders into uncomfortable choices, waiting for them to blink first. And when you put a force like Duren next to that kind of floor general, the pick and roll stops being a simple play. It becomes a living, breathing problem that hangs over every possession. Because now, defenses aren't guarding just a screen, they're guarding a chain reaction. Stay home on Cade, and he gets into his rhythm. Slow, smooth, surgical, picking apart every read until someone slips up. But send help, hedge too hard, or show for even half a second, and Duren turns into a falling weight from the sky. He doesn't need room to create. He just needs one step, one hesitation, one late rotation. Then it's a dunk, a foul, or a rebound that breaks your spirit. And the cruel part? It messes with defensive instincts. Normally, teams live by a rule. Contain the ball, then recover. Simple. But against Cade and Duren, recovery turns into a gamble you probably can't win. That extra shuffle toward Cade, the one you take out of habit, is the same one that makes you late on Duren. And when you're late, you're not contesting him. You're meeting him midair, which is like showing up to an argument you've already lost. So teams start overcompensating. They pre-rotate early. They drop a wing into the paint before the pass even comes. They try to cover the rim before it's under attack. And the moment they do that, Detroit shooters exhale, the floor opens up, and suddenly the defense is sprinting back out like it just touched a live wire. It's not just that Duren scores, it's the choices he forces. Every rotation becomes a risk. Every help decision feels wrong. He makes defenses pick their poison, and whichever way they lean, he punishes it with the kind of basketball that drains morale. Offensive rebounds, second chances, and finishes that feel unfair because you thought you did everything right. And here's what too many people miss when they call him a rim runner. That label only fits if your value depends on someone else finding you. But Duren creates his own opportunities. Even when the play breaks down, Cade forced into a tough jumper, the ball clangs off iron. Duren is right there to turn that miss into 2 points that erase 22 seconds of perfect defense. He's the guy who turns chaos into control, who turns effort plays into scoreboard swings. Playing against him is like trying to carry water in your hands. You can do everything right until the last drop, and it still slips through. That's what breaks teams. You do your job, you contest, you rotate, you box out, and the score still moves against you. That's why Duren's rise isn't about development. It's about leverage. He's becoming the kind of player who makes a star guard's life easier without ever hijacking the spotlight. His impact isn't loud. It's gravitational. Defenses bend around him, even when he doesn't touch the ball. His power comes from timing, position, and effort that doesn't quit. And once that gravity becomes reliable, once teams realize they can't scheme it away, it stops being part of a young core fairy tale. It becomes a problem. Because the league is full of talent, but not everyone creates pressure. The Cade and Duren combo creates pressure you can feel. It doesn't always show up in highlights, but you see it in the way defenders start reacting early, boxing out harder than they meant to, rotating faster than their legs want to, and crumbling late in the fourth quarter. It's the kind of pressure that doesn't announce itself. It just keeps showing up until the game's over, and you're left wondering how it slipped away. Every young big man eventually runs into the same invisible wall. Not a shot blocker, a playoff wall. That's when the game changes from a sprint to a chess match, when every move gets dissected and opponents stop reacting and start scheming. During the regular season, strength, timing, and consistency can carry you far. Teams are tired, rotations are sloppy, and sometimes effort alone wins the night. But the playoffs, that's a different reality. There, nothing is casual. Every roll gets tagged, every rebound gets boxed out, every lob window turns into traffic. And the question for Jalen Duren, the one that'll define his climb, is simple but brutal. When the easy stuff disappears, what's left? That's the next test waiting for him. Not whether he can dunk or grab boards, we already know that, but whether he can stay just as effective when teams spend an entire week trying to erase his comfort zone. That's where his evolution comes in, because Duren doesn't need to reinvent himself as some three-point shooting stretch big to keep leveling up. What he needs are a few sharp, specific tools, the kind that make defenses regret overplaying their hand. The first one's the least flashy, but maybe the most important: free throws, because playoff defenses are ruthless. If they see a chance to test your composure, they will. When a young center starts to dominate, teams don't just back down. They foul, they grab, they make you earn it at the line. And if you can't cash in, you get played out of big minutes in the biggest moments. Duren doesn't have to be automatic, just steady enough to make that trade-off too expensive for opponents. If he locks that in, it changes how teams defend him entirely. The second upgrade lies in what coaches call the short roll. That little pocket of space right after the screen when the ball hits your hands and chaos starts unfolding. That's where elite bigs separate themselves. Catch, 2 steps, quick read, finish, kick to the corner, or drop it to a cutter. It sounds simple, but it's everything. Because once a big learns to punish traps in that space, the whole offense opens up. If Duren starts making those reads consistently, trapping Cade Cunningham stops being a smart idea and starts being a gamble. Now you're not just giving up a dunk, you're triggering a 4-on-3 where Detroit's shooters eat. That's how duos stop being promising and start being problems. And then there's the hardest upgrade: defensive consistency. Duren already has the raw tools: power, bounce, awareness. But what separates the great centers from the rest isn't the highlight blocks, it's reliability. It's knowing how to be there every single night, how to keep the paint secure without picking up unnecessary fouls. It's the angles, the discipline, the timing. The NBA is cruel to young bigs because they get dragged into every scheme, pick and rolls, switches, small ball mismatches, guards trying to bait calls, and one bad read can flip a whole quarter. The elite ones learn when to contest and when to stay grounded, when to protect space instead of chasing glory. The best version of Duren is the one that stays on the floor, controls the paint, and doesn't give away free points. All of this matters because Duren's ceiling isn't solid starter. His ceiling is foundation. The kind of center who anchors both ends of the floor, who makes your offense cleaner and your defense scarier just by showing up. The scary part? His core skills already translate. The screens, the rim pressure, the second chances, the finishing through contact, those are playoff currencies that never lose value. They're the parts of the game that survive pressure. What changes in the postseason isn't the strength or skill, it's how defenses overcommit to take away your easy options. And that's when the greats separate themselves. The ones who can punish the overreaction, who make the counter move look routine. If Duren tightens those next few tools, steady from the line, sharper in the short roll, cleaner defensively, then what teams feel now as paint pressure becomes something worse, a system they can't solve. Because once he adds composure to his force, the game tilts. You're not just trying to survive his power anymore. You're dealing with his reads, his control, his ability to make the right play before you can reset. It stops being about how to defend him and becomes about how to endure him. That's the real arc of Jalen Duren's story. He doesn't have to change who he is. He just has to refine it. He's already built around the things that matter most: contact, effort, and consistency. He turns missed shots into new possessions, contact into points, fatigue into opportunity. And if Detroit's rise is real, if Cade is the mind steering it, then Duren is the heartbeat powering it. Quiet, focused, relentless. The kind of player who doesn't need to talk about dominance because everyone who plays against him already feels it. This is the part that always happens right before a player truly breaks into the league's spotlight. The production keeps climbing, the impact becomes impossible to ignore, and yet the talk around him still sounds like everyone's a step behind. People start breaking down Detroit's rise like it's just good vibes, or Cade finally taking the leap, or the team simply adding the right pieces. And somewhere in that mix, Jalen Duren's name gets tossed in like a side note. Just a solid big who finishes plays and cleans the mess. That's the quiet disrespect baked into how the modern NBA talks about centers, especially the ones who don't live behind the arc. Because in today's league, if you're not hitting threes, you have to dominate loud enough that the world can't pretend it's not happening. And Duren's starting to do exactly that. Not by becoming flashy, but by becoming inevitable. You can tell he's real by what he does to the other team's body language. When he's on the court, opponents don't just run their sets, they run them differently. Guards pull up short instead of driving. Wings hesitate on cuts that used to be automatic. Bigs crash the glass like their lives depend on it, because they've already learned what happens when they don't. That kind of impact doesn't live in box scores. It lives in hesitation, in second thoughts, in the way an opponent's rhythm quietly dies. And the deeper truth is that his rise isn't just about Detroit, it's about the league's cycle. The NBA always swings back. It shrinks, then it grows. It obsesses over spacing, then rediscovers that pressure at the rim still decides who wins in May. Every few years, a team built on finesse runs into a wall built on muscle, and suddenly everyone remembers the basics. Rebounds still matter, second chances still crush confidence, and physicality still travels. That's why Duren represents more than numbers. He's a reminder that you can't spreadsheet your way out of contact. You can't analytics your way out of toughness. There's still a question every contender has to answer the hard way. Can you handle this for 48 minutes? Duren is becoming the kind of player that front offices start whispering about after a playoff loss. The guy who makes them rethink their roster balance. The one who forces them to ask if they've got the size and strength to survive that kind of fight. Because the moment a young big starts bending games with effort and presence, not just stats, the entire league starts paying quiet attention. Once you start looking at Duren that way, the story changes. He's not just developing into a nice starter, he's becoming a tone, a style, a problem that forces everyone else to react. Detroit with Cade Cunningham is already a headache for defenses. He controls pace, plays chess with angles, and waits for the smallest mistake. Add Duren to that, now it's physical too. Now it's not just chess, it's chess where every bad move costs you 2 points and a sore rib. That's the difference between a young team and a matchup. Not fun, not promising. A matchup you'd rather avoid in April. That's why this version of Detroit feels different. They finally have something that travels. A blueprint that doesn't rely on perfect shooting nights or luck. They've got a creator who can slow the game to his rhythm and a big who makes you pay for every rotation. A duo that punishes every crack in your system, not with flash, but with force. And that's the warning hidden inside Jalen Duren's rise. You don't need him to be viral to matter. You just need him to keep making the paint expensive, keep turning rebounds into momentum, keep forcing defenses into mistakes they didn't plan for. Because once that consistency locks in, once the identity hardens, it's over. The conversation will catch up whether people like it or not. Because Duren's not just changing how Detroit plays, he's changing how teams feel when they face them, and that's when you know the league's been put on notice. The easiest way to explain Jalen Duren's rise is this. He's turning effort into inevitability. Plenty of young bigs play hard. Plenty jump out the gym. Plenty can give you a few big box scores when the matchups are soft and the passes are clean. But very few can make their presence felt when the game turns messy. When the spacing's tight, the whistle's uneven, and the fatigue starts creeping in. That's where Duren's starting to live now. That's what separates him. Because talent is everywhere in this league. But pressure, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that reshapes how opponents play, that's rare. He brings the kind of pressure that makes coaches shorten their benches, that makes defenders cheat early just to survive. Suddenly, every pick and roll feels like a lose-lose. Help on the guard and give up the roll, or stay attached and get cooked. Either way, you're in trouble. And when you look at Detroit through that lens, it all starts to make sense. Cade Cunningham is the mind, the calm operator who reads the floor like he's got the remote in his hand. Jalen Duren is the muscle, the power source that converts Cade's patience into points, rebounds, and momentum. Together, they don't need perfection to win possessions. They don't need a hot shooting night or a lucky whistle. They just need time. Because time is what wears people down, and fatigue is where Duren does his best work. The longer the game drags on, the more every box out becomes a test, the more every rebound turns into a collision, the more every missed rotation turns into another two-handed finish. By the fourth quarter, you're not just playing Detroit, you're wrestling with them. So the question isn't whether Duren's good, that's already answered. The real question is how long the league can keep pretending they don't see what's happening. Because if he keeps stacking seasons like this, if he keeps tightening those small details that turn strength into control, like steadying his free throws, sharpening his short roll reads, and staying locked in defensively, then the paint tax stops being a tax. It becomes a system, a full-on problem you can't scheme away. That's when everything changes, because when a young center reaches the point where his presence dictates your game plan, it's no longer about Detroit having a nice piece. It's about Detroit having an identity. And identities are what last. They don't rely on rhythm. They don't depend on hot streaks. They depend on who you are every single night. So sure, call him a rim runner if you want. That label sounds safe, sounds easy until you're stuck in a 7-game series and you realize it's not a label, it's a warning. Because the moment your big man relaxes, the moment someone skips a box out, the moment your weak side help takes a lazy step toward Cade, Duren's already there, rising like a decision you regret, turning one mistake into 2 points that feel inevitable. And if you're watching Detroit this season and wondering why they suddenly look different, why the league's tone around them has shifted, why the jokes have gone quiet, it's not a mystery. Start in the paint. That's where the story lives. That's where Jalen Duren is building something that doesn't ask for respect anymore. It takes it. So here's the question. How high is his ceiling really? Is Duren about to become an all-star anchor, the kind of center teams will dread facing in May? Or is he one more leap away from hitting that level? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want more deep dives like this, more stories about players changing the shape of the game, hit that subscribe. Catch you in the next one. Peace.